Hello and welcome to episode number 126 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, I'm going to give you some early impressions of Disintegration. I'm going to rip Beyond Two Souls apart. We'll look forward to this week's new releases and streams happening over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex. First up on this week's show is a game called Disintegration. Talked a little bit about it last week. It was like a 75% Sean type game, co-creator of Halo, big check mark. FPS game, big check mark. Sci-fi robotic thing, look cool, big check mark. But the big caveat was what I said was real-time strategy. They're advertising it as real-time tactics. I would assume strategy has something to do with base building. For me, they're largely going to be semantical terms, just because I don't know those genres very well. But because that's how they're advertising it, just want to set the record straight, I guess. Real-time tactics. That part worried me because it wasn't something that I had a ton of familiarity with, and it also, in my mind, clicks to be like a slower style of game. And I'm happy to report that it was actually a pleasant surprise. I've only played the game for about an hour and a half in the single player. I did 2 missions in the tutorial, and then I also played a match and a half of multiplayer. And during the multiplayer, that was the only time the game froze and crashed, was in that section. And the multiplayer doesn't it runs well in the match, barring, I mean, obviously I said that it crashed, but it does take a really long time to load, not only to find a match, which is fine because I played it at launch, not that big of a deal, I'm willing to let that slide, but once it finds a match, it takes a while to get going. Like, loading the map is a very long process. But I think that the multiplayer is actually fun and really well designed for what this game is. And what this game is a sci-fi RTT real-time tactics / first-person shooter game. And I think it's a really clever implementation of those two genres. You're introduced to a new character in a new world, and I think this is the one like negative aspect of it that I would give it is I don't think it introduces this stuff super well. I don't know what the main goal is. Granted, I'm still early in the game, but you're introduced to this character who I guess was like kind of a celebrity or something that was on TV to tell humans that it was a good idea to take your brain and put it in a robot or something like that. Turns out you're being held captive by someone who you know is evil because they have red eyes instead of blue eyes, like your character has blue eyes. And you immediately escape and you shoot down to Earth, presumably, and then you are off on a mission, but I'm not 100% sure what that mission was. It's an interesting cutscene, though. I liked the dynamic of the new characters, I liked the look and the style of it, and I just thought it was cool. Like, I was engaged with it even though I wasn't 100% sure what was going on. When you land on Earth, you're looking for weapons so that you can, I guess, maybe like start a revolution. Maybe that's the point of it. Still not 100% sure. It's fine. But you meet this character. He gives you the opportunity to like kind of team up with him. He knows where some stuff is. He can lend you some tools and some equipment to help you find this stuff. And this is where the gameplay element comes into it, because it's interesting. I watched a little bit about it. I watched the story trailer. I thought it looked cool, and I watched a smidge of gameplay, but I was like, how does this work? How are you a real-time tactics game where you can actively affect the battle with machine guns and like dealing health and stuff? Like, how does that work? And I think it's actually a really clever little workaround that they give you. They just give you a gyrocycle and they go, here's this thing that you play in like the first person view of your character, and you have machine guns and you have health abilities, and there you go. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense and that works really well, and I enjoy controlling it. It's a little wonky at first because I expect it to be maybe a little smoother or a little slower, because that's what I'm used to when I hear Halo. I get that kind of like slower style, but this one feels a little jerkier. It didn't quite feel perfect the way that I think Halo feels. I think Halo feels really good across all of the games, and we'll be looking at those shortly on the show. But this one, it took a little bit of getting used to. I don't feel like the aiming is quite right on. Like, I noticed that I was moving past back and forth, and that only becomes a problem because one of the main gameplay mechanics is to push the RB button, and that tells you where your little squad is. You have a squad of 3 characters. They each have like a specific ability, and you can issue them commands. And this is where the FPS aspect of it really comes in handy and makes me want to continue playing this game. You, like I said, press RB, you can give them commands, you can tell them to hide behind rocks, you can tell them to focus on an enemy. What I like about it is because you have the ability to help your team with machine guns and by giving them health, you can actively affect the battle. So if you accidentally, or intentionally in my case, or just unknowingly because I'm not very good at this game, if you put them out in the open and an enemy swings around behind, you can take care of that enemy before it becomes a problem, which means that your characters that are on the ground, they don't lose health, which means they don't die, which means you don't lose, which means that you keep progressing. And I liked that I kept feeling like I was moving forward. I wasn't super stressed about like, oh, is this character in the right position? Is this going to work from a tactical perspective? No, I can actively help and like keep things moving. The way the story campaign is structured is you go into this hub world and you talk to people and you can get a new mission, and you can get optional mission objectives, which I find fun to complete. Then you go out in the world and you take on these kind of linear, actually not even kind of linear, they are linear, very linear. Have I said linear enough? Linear missions that have a very like battle, travel, ebb and flow to them. But I enjoyed them. There's like stuff that you can highlight in the world. You can get yourself more scrap to upgrade. There's like all kinds of stuff you can upgrade, you or your crew members' health or their weapon output power or a bunch of other things. And I was just really surprised at how much was there. And I just really enjoyed it. I think it's a really cool world, even if I'm not super sure exactly what I'm doing. I'm having a good time with it. I like the mix of the real-time tactics with the first-person shooter aspects in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I just had a really good time with it. It has such a cool vibe to it, and I like the characters. And the only reason I didn't continue playing is I was just playing other stuff and doing other things. Otherwise, I would have. And I'm looking forward to getting back to it because I really liked what I played in that first hour and a half or so. And also, shout out to the actor of the main character. They stopped by the stream and said hi, and then said thanks for playing the game, which was really cool. So that was neat. Our second game this week is part 3 of our Quantic Dream retrospective. So far, we've looked at Indigo Prophecy, didn't like it at all. We've looked at Heavy Rain, really enjoyed my second playthrough of it, surprisingly so. And here we've come to the second game released by Quantic Dream on the PlayStation 3, Beyond Two Souls. I bought this game day one when it came out. This game is kind of interesting the way it was marketed and shown off. Like, they really honed in on, we have Ellen Page and we have Willem Dafoe. I don't think I've ever bought a game before that has the names of the actors on the box, and I'm sure that those games are very few and far between. Because you don't ever see, like, popular actors would be like Dave Fennoy or Ashley Johnson or Troy Baker or Nolan North. You don't see their names plastered all over the box, but you do with Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe because they have name recognition and facial recognition, and people will go, oh, the girl from Juno's in this high art piece of garbage. Anyway, I bought the game when it originally came out, and I played it for what ended up being an hour and a half, because when I was replaying it, I remember getting to like a certain point and then going like, I don't want to play this anymore because I don't enjoy this game. This game is not told in chronological order for some bizarre, weird reason. They try to explain it at the very beginning and the literal very end of the game, but they never go back to it in the middle at all. At the very beginning, you're greeted with Ellen Page saying that I have all these memories, but they aren't coming to me in the correct order, and I have to kind of piece them together. Okay, that's not really an answer for why everything is out of chronological order and explained in such a fragmented and just distracting and disorienting way. It would make more sense to me if you, as the player, were given, like, here's the first 3 chapters of the game, or whatever, and they give you those points to work with, and then as the chapters come in, you have to try and piece where they went in the timeline, and then at the end of the game, or their various checks at, like, the quarter, half, 3/4, and final part to be like, okay, you have it 65% right, you have to move some stuff around. That would make more sense. That's still a cheap excuse to have a game that is, again, just so fragmented and weird. And it actually took me a long time to figure out exactly why that bothered me so much. This is a 10-hour experience or so, and to use another piece of media that is not told in chronological order, probably the most popular one, Pulp Fiction, movie that I don't like nearly as much as other people, but that's a conversation for a different day. The point is, that movie runs about 2 hours and 45 minutes. You could watch Pulp Fiction 3 times in the time it takes you to do one playthrough of Beyond Two Souls. So, watching Pulp Fiction 3 times, you start to understand how the order goes, what means what, how this is placed, all that stuff. Pulp Fiction also works in larger chapters. I don't remember how many there are. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's larger chunks of a movie that once you figure out how they all go together, it really feels like a rewarding experience and is interesting. Beyond Two Souls is obviously 3 times the length, but the chapters vary from about 10 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes, and it can be hard to make those connections from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. And I even had that problem when I was playing it, and I played it pretty close together. I played about half of it on Saturday, and I played half of it on Sunday. And even towards the end on Sunday, I was struggling to see how it all connected. And I just can't imagine that people are going to want to put that much time into playing it. It's interesting because on the PlayStation 4 version of the game, which is what I played, it gives you an opportunity to play in what they call, weirdly, the remixed mode, where you can play it in chronological order. I chose to play it in the original mixed up order because that's the way the hack artist intended it to be played, and I did not enjoy my time with it. It's interesting that I played this game in 2 halves because the first half is not terrible, but it's also not super interesting. You're kind of just waiting for something to happen. It's actually fairly unmemorable. Much more of the second half is why I really do not like this game. The first half of the game tries to set up characters, relationships, gameplay mechanics, and that sort of thing. This one has a few different changes from the previous game, Heavy Rain, in the way some of the action sequences work, and I really struggled with those for some reason. There's an entire chapter in the first half of the game called Welcome to the CIA, where it introduces you to the fighting mechanics. And in the previous game, in Heavy Rain, the game would pop on screen the direction of the arrow that you need to push the right stick. So if it shows right, you push right. If it shows left, you push left. Sensible enough. This game takes those away during action sequences and instead fades the color and the time, like it slows time down, and has you move your stick in coordination with the way Jodie's body is moving on screen. For whatever reason, this just threw me off because when she's blocking, in my brain, I'm automatically thinking, oh, okay, I need to push. If she's falling right and blocking, I need to push left for her to absorb the blow. But no, the game wants you to push right for whatever reason, just probably to keep it simple. It just threw me off. I feel like it actually would have made more sense to do it where if she's blocking an attack or if she's trying to dodge or something, like, you work with it in the kind of the opposite way. These sequences can be really hard to read because sometimes the color it's not, her character model isn't distinct enough against some of the messier backgrounds or kind of plain, like there's a desert sequence you play in where it's like really hard to tell because when it slows down the screen got a little bit like muddier and it was just hard to tell exactly what was happening. So when I thought she was going right, the game wanted you to go down, but it's like I can't really tell anything about that. It's also in this sequence that we are introduced to what would be a pretty forced love interest and a cover-based third-person shooter sort of mechanic that doesn't work at all. I just don't think it's fun to play. And the romance aspect of it really sucks. The CIA storyline actually really sucks from just a start to finish storyline. It's really awful. It basically just gives them an excuse to give whoever is creating the experiment enough money to make it the most formidable thing that it can possibly be, which reminds me I haven't actually talked about what this game is. This game is the story of Jodie Foster. She has an entity that is attached to her called Aiden. She doesn't know what it is, but Aiden can, it's an invisible thing that can do kind of whatever. That's kind of my first big problem with this game is I didn't really understand the relationship between Aiden and Jodie. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't work. I don't think it's ever explained super well. There are times when she doesn't want it around her at all. There are times where it seems like she relies on it, but it also is unclear about, like, is Aiden acting independently sometimes? Does she want it to do things? I don't know. I thought it was really weak. The gameplay stuff with that isn't super interesting. And those are problems as well, because when you switch to Aiden, you are typically looking for a little blue dot that when you press the L1 button, you then have to either pull the thumbsticks back or in towards each other or away from each other in like opposite directions. And it can be really hard to tell because sometimes when you are Aiden, the screen again is really messy and it's hard to lock on and pick where exactly you're supposed to be looking, because you have to fight these other entities from the Ender world or whatever the hell they call it. I don't remember. It sucks. It's really stupid. It's not interesting and it's dumb. And it's just, the game's really hard to follow because it's told in such a messy and distracting way. It's really bad. There are times where the game like sets you up to feel something, but you don't care because the game doesn't give you the proper build up to hit this moment. Like there's a time where you're homeless, and I think that was the original like E3 trailer or E3 demo, what is a better word. And that sequence happens, and you have the option to like jump off a bridge for some reason, but I don't know why she would want to do that, why Jodie would want to do that. It doesn't make any sense. And it's just like, why is she here? What is she doing? Like, what is going on with this? It's super weird, and it doesn't work. And that's just in the first half of the game. The game is kind of frustrating and confusing and kind of dumb, but it's not offensively bad. It's not like I'm sitting here going like, why, dear God, why is this happening? Enter the second half of this game. The second half of this game is an absolute mess, and it's why I don't like this game at the level that I don't like it. What I would like to do is I'd like to point out 3 chapters that I think make some really egregious errors in why this game unravels so quickly from being like, okay, but I'm not enjoying it, to, oh dear God, why won't this end? I hate this. The first chapter that we're going to talk about is Navajo, and it's interesting because it was the first chapter that I played on the second day, on Sunday, that I played this game. There's a strong possibility that I would not have continued playing this game if I had played the Navajo chapter the previous day. This chapter doesn't start out terribly. You're walking alongside the road. You stumble upon a little ranch that you are given a place to rest and eat. And it starts with an interesting conversation. The first dinner table conversation you have is interesting. You get a little bit of background on the characters that you're talking to. You can give a little information about yourself if you want. I kind of just asked them about what they were doing and how things were going. Then it takes a weird turn. There is something going on where they have to board up all the doors and the windows, and you are told to just lay in your bed, go to sleep, and don't get up no matter what you hear. This is what I would qualify as a cardinal sin as far as story-based games are concerned. I can't stand when you are playing as a character who is downtrodden or in like a spot of bother, and someone gives you an opportunity and the game forces you to go against the instructions of the person who is being kind to you. It drives me nuts. I can't stand it. Like, I just wanted to listen and be like, I'm just going to go to bed. I don't need to know. You do you. Just hang out. I'll sleep. We're cool. Good. Moving on. But this game makes you get up, and it turns out there might be something more going on that we don't really know about. The next day, when you get up, is actually kind of interesting. It has a very homestead missions feel to it, where you're kind of working on the ranch doing some random things. Homestead missions are in Red Dead Redemption, before I forget to mention that. You go get a bale of hay, you get some water, you help get a horse to get back in the stable, whatever it is. You do those things, and it's actually kind of like a nice, like, calm little patch. You have another conversation with a couple of people. At some point during this, I think it's the previous night, but at some point you are told that the grandmother in this group, it's a grandmother, a father, and 2 sons. The grandmother of this group won't talk to you because she has not said a word in 30 years. And boy, if that isn't predictable what's going to happen, it gets a whole lot more easily predictable and it's really dumb, and I really can't stand it. You keep getting visited by these like apparitions, and this is where the game starts to take its turn more into the like paranormal activity aspects of the game, which is my least favorite part because I just don't really have an interest in that stuff in the first place. The game, or this chapter, I should say, becomes exceptionally more predictable the longer it goes on, and this chapter goes on way too long. I think it clocks in at a little over an hour. The game did crash during this part. I think I only had to replay about 5 minutes, but I think at the end of it I was at about an hour and 20 minutes or so into the recording. It doesn't take any interesting turns. It like somehow like the group that you find isn't able to figure any of this out. They don't know what they're dealing with, but Jody stumbles upon them and immediately figures out and solves everything, and it's really stupid. And there are just laughably predictable portions of this where she has like a vision because she can use Aiden to help her look at the past or some garbage that happens. And as soon as you see like a key item like a blanket, you're like, oh god, this is going in this direction. Oh, you are kidding me. And that's not the first time I said that, or the last time. And of course it has to do with the grandma, and the grandma, who, reminder, hasn't spoken in 30 years. You say, hey, that's a nice blanket, and she goes, oh, thank you, and she's just chatty Cathy, and you're like, what the fuck? What is this? This is garbage. It's trash. And it proceeds to go down this annoying hole, and I didn't really care for it. They also seem to think that the game expresses that you have built some kind of relationship with the two sons, because at the end of it you have the option to kiss one of them, and it's like, well, why would I do that? And like is any sort of bond being built here, like with this group of people? Like I kind of just showed up. I don't know how long I've been here. It's only been like 2 nights maybe, and all of a sudden like I could just kiss this guy. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. It's just dumb. And there's a portion where you can be really open with one of the brothers, and because of the way the game is told to you, you have the option to be sincere. So when he asks you, what are you doing all the way out here? Like why are you wandering the desert? You have the option to be sincere, which is what I picked. Because you don't know what happened that led her to this point at the time that this happens, because it's told all out of order and all jumbled, she gives this bullshit ass answer because the game can't tell you what happened. And it's just so infuriating. Or like she looks at him and she's like, oh, I'm just running from my past. And I'm like, oh, you've got to be, come on. Like really, really, come on. Ugh. It's just, it's a bad chapter that's way too long. And that is a running theme through the rest of the chapters that we're going to talk about. The second chapter in the back half that really drove me nuts is a chapter called The Mission. And this reestablishes the CIA narrative that sucked at the beginning, sucks in the middle, and sucks in the end. The problem with this is, aside from it just being way too long, it brings back game mechanics that weren't interesting in the first place and makes you do them for like an hour, and it's just terrible. This commits the cardinal sin of having you do something like 3 times for no apparent reason. It also does the really dumb action movie thing where you have like a big long car chase, but it doesn't get you any closer to who you're supposed to be getting towards. Like, you get done with this car chase that's like 3 minutes or 4 minutes if you pick the incorrect path, which I did, and you don't get any closer. You're driving and driving and driving in the direction of where you're supposed to go. And it doesn't, it's like you move 10 feet and you have 3 miles to go. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Come on, game. Like, give me something to work with here that's interesting. The third-person based cover mechanics are really boring, and the other cardinal sin that this game commits is implementing those in a stealth mission in a game that is not designed for stealth. Though they do get credit for trying to build a system around that, it just doesn't work because this is a story-focused, like, visual novel, essentially, where it's very linear and it always points you in the right direction. It just doesn't work. It takes way too long. I couldn't stand it. Though the end part of it does actually touch on a couple of interesting things. You get teamed up with this character. Things go according to plan, but then they are kind of, the perspective gets changed, and it's like, oh, this didn't quite go the way it should have gone. Uh-oh. And it kind of has some very light commentary on Americans lying to, like, American agencies lying to soldiers to execute a democratically elected president, and that kind of, like, it kind of touches on that stuff, but it also doesn't ever bring that up again, and that's the only interesting nugget in that particular portion. It gets rid of it, and I forgot to mention, it gets rid of the characters that you meet when you're homeless immediately, and then maybe you come back to them depending on the choice you make towards the end of the game. It's just dumb. It's weird how it picks up something, kind of gives you something interesting to be engaged with, and then immediately goes, no, you can't have that. Here's this instead. And the here's this instead, never that great. Finally, what we'll talk about is the chapter, The Black Hole. This is the final, like, playable chapter. There's one more after this that happens called, that's the epilogue, called the epilogue, whatever. Sounds pretentiously called the epilogue. This chapter sucks because not only is it way too long, but it's just overall really stupid, and it is terrible. This particular chapter's cardinal sin is giving you a hallway sequence, and as you walk down this hallway, you're supposed to be walking towards your main goal, which is to shut down the Infraworld, or whatever the hell it's called, and it doesn't have a great depth perception for how long you've been walking, and it just takes forever. It also gives you a really questionable end to one of the characters, and the decision they make I don't think works, and I think it's really bad messaging for the theme that they're kind of working with. I think it doesn't play well. It's really dumb. We also have to deal with the forced love interest in Ryan, and the game just, for whatever reason, doesn't put together that I keep saying no, and so, like, he thinks he's gonna die or whatever, and he runs over and he kisses me, and I'm like, what the fuck? I said no 38 minutes ago, because this takes forever. 38 minutes ago, and you can't remember. Don't kiss me. What are you doing? Get out of here. Stop. It's just, it's garbage. You're then faced with a decision that's supposed to be difficult, but it's really not. It's just trash. It's a really bad ending. It's other cardinal sin is just taking way too long when you know you're right there. Like, you know that it has a very ending feel where she's trying to leave and she gets pulled in for, like, one last question or whatever, and it wouldn't end, and it was terrible. And then you have the epilogue, which gives you the most absolute garbage ending. It thinks it's so smart, it thinks it's so clever, so interesting, and so predictive of a potential sequel that I just groaned. It reminded me of when I went and saw my first movie ever with the Beeb, and that was Twilight New Moon. And I sat there for the entire runtime of 2 hours just going, what? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That was this game for the last about 3 hours, and especially the ending, only louder and more colorful, because I'm 30 and I curse a lot. There were a lot of, like, are you effing kidding me? And are you blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. It's absolutely horrendous, and it is laughably stupid in what they think they're doing. It is a flat out bad game. The first half isn't terrible. It's just not interesting, and that's the other interesting thing before I get too far down that road. Even if I played this game in chronological order, which I appreciate that they give you the option to do, I don't think this game ever poses any sort of interesting question, interesting theme, interesting characters or dynamics or relationships, minus Cole. Cole is the best character in this game, bar none. Jodie really wore me down towards the end, where she just stopped listening at some point, and I'm like, how are you not hearing what he's saying? Clearly he means this. Why are you not? Open your ears, please. It just doesn't present anything worth following. So even if you play this in chronological order, I still can't imagine you're going to get that much out of it. And I think the writing would still be weird because it's written to specifically work with it being told non-chronologically. So going back to the example I gave in the Navajo chapter where she gives a garbage answer, that's still going to be the same, even though you're going to know the answer. Maybe it plays a little bit differently or a little better, but it just doesn't feel like it would work even if you went through. And dear God, I am not going to even try. If you're curious about what it looks like in chronological mode, go watch a different video, because I am not putting any more time into this game. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It sucks. This game sucks. It is terrible. A terrible game. I'd argue that it's worse than Indigo Prophecy, a game that I gave up on in like 15 minutes. It is so bad. We're 3 down and 1 to go, and the next one and the final one is Detroit Become Human, and it can't possibly be worse than this. Please, dear God, don't be worse than this. Finally, on this week's show, we'll take a look at the new releases. There's nothing in theaters but Irresistible, a new political satire from Jon Stewart, who used to host The Daily Show, starring Steve Carell and Rose Byrne. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. I'm sorry if that's not. I'm curious about this. I think Jon Stewart is uniquely suited to political satire because he did it for so long on The Daily Show, and I think Steve Carell and Rose Byrne are really good stars or leads for that movie. I like her a lot. I think she's very underrated. There's nothing out on Blu-ray, and then there are 3 games of note this week. The biggest being SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, which is a remaster of a 2003 game. It's probably the most popular SpongeBob game around. We also have Night Call, which is a detective-seeming game where you play as a taxi driver trying to uncover information to solve something. It has a really cool aesthetic. I like the idea of it, and I'm excited to play it sometime in the near future. And then my most anticipated / most excited for release this week is actually a game called Death Comes True. It is a FMV game, a full motion video game, where you are stuck in a time loop and you might be a serial killer. And I can't wait to play it. We're going to check that out on Thursday. Speaking of streams happening over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex, this bag will be full of wrapped random video games for the 2nd season premiere of Grab Bag. We're going to do 2 episodes of that. I'm so excited that I can't even talk. I love doing Grab Bag. I need to get a bunch of crap out of this bag and put games in it, but that's what's happening on Wednesday. Thursday, like I said, Death Come True. Saturday, we're going to be playing Detroit Become Human. I don't know if there's going to be baseball. This game runs a little bit longer, so I might just do Detroit Become Human, do like 6 hours and 6 hours, because I think it runs about 12 hours total. And then Monday, I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen, so tune in for that. Thank you so much for watching Week in Review. If you like the content, you can scroll on down and you can hit the subscribe button and you can ring that bell so you know when I post new videos. Then I do this hand motion where I point you to the comments below and you can leave me a comment down there. You can tell me what you thought of Disintegration if you played it. If you liked Beyond Two Souls, clearly I did not. You can let me know what you're looking forward to coming out this week or in the near future. If I've missed something that you're excited for, tell me down there. Head on over to twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for streams over there. And check back every Tuesday right here for more Week in Review. We'll see you next week.